Well guys, being on this channel has been a wild and amazing ride, especially with all of you. And seeing that it is the 3-year anniversary of my very first Warriors analysis, I thought I'd do a special video for the occasion, but not just any video, a review of the new hotness of the Musou franchise, Dynasty Warriors 9.
Alright, I gotta leave, okay?
John, we just started. Come on, man.
Listen, there's a lot to see in this life. Not wasting it here.
This is largely going to be unscripted because, really, what else is there to say about this topic that hasn't already been said? Dynasty Warriors 9 was such a disappointment that I find it difficult to put my thoughts into words properly. We all saw the writing on the wall, making a large percentage of the roster cloned characters, robbing them of their individuality and uniqueness, the open world aspect that doesn't mesh well with the fundamental aspects of the Dynasty Warriors formula, and the complete lack of communication on the developers' end. No one tried to reassure us that this game would still be the Dynasty Warriors we all knew and love. And then the game came out, and I, as well as many other content creators, knew that it was going to be a massive failure on both ends. Why do you gotta be like this? With the release of Dynasty Warriors 7 and 8, we already knew what the apex of what this genre can do, and it was clear that Omega Force had to change the formula in order for the franchise to grow. New ideas beget new innovations, all that stuff. So when they announced that they were gonna go open world with the series for the 9th installment, everybody was skeptical, because Koei Tecmo isn't exactly known for their open world games. Because they don't have any open world games. This would be their very first attempt at this style of game, for a Dynasty Warriors game no less. So, like good fans, we waited until Koei was ready to tell us what exactly going open world for Dynasty Warriors meant. And then they started showing off some characters, faces that we knew, and the new designs that they had, which was very nice and interesting. And then...
The Republic's clone army strives for victory against the evil forces.
Yeah, a lot of people weren't exactly thrilled that all of their favorite characters had their weapons changed, and not for the better. The Gene faction characters took the biggest hit, since almost all of them had unique weapons. So it was clear that weapon variety had to be sacrificed in order for them to work on the open world. So morale was at an all-time low, and it looked like Omega Force was putting the buck before the horse. And a few months before the game's release, they showed off a bunch of gameplay features which kinda looked alright. Nothing special, nothing that really wowed people, especially me. There was hunting, there was base building, there was side quests. It looked like there was going to be a lot to do in the game. And then the game came out. Why you gotta be like this? Now, I'm not going to pretend that Dynasty Warriors is this amazing, perfect franchise, because it's not. It has flaws. But at the core, these games are trying to be fun. Silly, off-the-cuff fun. And I also understand that a lot of people are put off by this mixture of style over substance. And that's fine. I'm okay with people not liking the series because it's just not their thing. Because in spite of what Polygon might tell you, not every game needs to be made for everyone. So to see Omega Force chase the top trend of 2017 for a game that was going to be released in 2018, you can forgive us all for feeling somewhat betrayed. Because this huge map of China doesn't really serve any purpose. It's just here. It is the boggiest of standard open world maps. A huge landscape with about 100 key points that are meticulously crafted, with a lot of copy-paste assets that are peppered along the negative space. And there is a lot of negative space. This open world isn't even that good to look at. Sure, it has some amazing lighting, but that's pretty much the only thing it has going for it. Gone are the days of picking what battle you want to fight in from a menu and then immediately being dropped into that battle. Now, we have to go through the meticulous process of going to location, finding guy, talk to guy, initiate cutscene, try not to stab out your ears.
Jing province has fallen to Wei, and ooh.
Initiate mission, find mission on map, ride your horse for a fucking hour, arrive at combat area, attempt to do mission. This mission is about 1 billion levels above your current level. You might want to do some side missions to lower the difficulty. And guess what? Some of those side missions are over your level as well, so you have to do more side missions to lower the difficulty of side missions, so you can lower the difficulty of the main mission, and then you can complete a mission. This is what you'll be doing for the next 70 hours with little to no variation. Listen, I come from a family of plumbers and engineers, and I know a sink when I see one. And don't think that you can minimize this process by utilizing the fast travel system, because your waypoints will appear and disappear like it's the climax of a Jedi movie. It doesn't matter if you risk life and limb for these points of interest, they have nothing but contempt for you, because it's just going to be gone for random reasons. I guess object permanents mean nothing to a Megaforce. The only travel points you can consistently rely on are the watchtowers, which reveal other portions of the map which you can unlock more points of interest, waypoints that are major points of interest that are scattered across the roads that reveal minor points of interest, or camps, which you probably aren't going to bother to try to find, and trust me, they're not worth it. So the big map really has no purpose, and it's only here because a Koei executive wanted it to exist. This huge map is this game's loot box. It just feels like they just made a Romance of the Three Kingdoms map with a few Dynasty Warriors elements peppered onto it, without really thinking about how that would work in an open world setting. Events are happening in the far distance which you really don't have control over, and have little to no effect on what you're actually doing in the story, because everything just resets to how they should be once you get to the next chapter. And there's no real reason to do any of this side content. Hunting, fishing, capturing bases, even attending to the hideaway is underwhelming. The presentation also took a hit because there's no real stylization or attempt to immerse the player in any way. I mean, we get nothing during the loading screens, and these load times are ridiculously long. I thought we figured this out in previous Dynasty Warriors games. Okay, so navigation is a bore and slog, but when you're in the actual meat of things, the combat, surely the game picks up then. I mean, Dynasty Warriors is known for their combat, so it has to be top-notch and stellar. I mean, if they did spend less time creating all these unique movesets, that means what little movesets they had left have to be vastly improved from the previous entries, right? So the thing about Dynasty Warriors combat is that it was very simple. It had real easy A-B style combos. Real easy to pick up and figure out. And what little strategy there was centered around you figuring out which of your character's attacks worked best against the enemy you were currently fighting. Basically a numbers game. Which strategy worked best for you heavily relied on which combos that you wanted to execute. In Dynasty Warriors 9, there is only one successful strategy: air juggling. Do it to everybody. Lu Bu, Hua Xiong, Guang Yu, who cares? It's completely broken. Well, there has to be more to it than that, Drake. Why, there certainly is. First, you use your charged attack, which instantly breaks their guard, and then mash the square button until their life bar is empty. And at some point during that myriad of button mashing, the enemy will be airborne. And if you maintain that for long enough, the game will basically say, okay, you beat them, and give you a button prompt that instantly kills them. Also, there aren't any combos. You have a light attack which you can button mash, and the other light attack which you can also button mash. No button combinations needed to be figured out here. So yeah, that's the gameplay loop for roughly 3 hours per character. Have fun with that. There's also no experimenting when it comes to combos, because fighting by yourself is completely different from fighting an actual enemy. You can't even practice your air combos because every attack in the air results in you sweeping down into the ground. I mean, look at this. This is just me pressing one button and occasionally hitting triangle to get in close. I mean, are we really taking design cues from Dynasty Warriors 6, the most hated entry in the franchise? I'm not kidding with how little experimentation there is. Every single character plays exactly the same with very little variation. So they killed weapon variety so that all weapons feel exactly the same. Those gameplay trailers were all but lies. And the point that really misses the mark for me is the lackluster voice acting.
If we remain in Zhongling, we will eventually have to hold off a pincer attack from both Liu Bei and Sun Quan. With a new enemy to the west, that is impossible.
Master Guan Yu and Master Zhang Fei were both fine warriors.
I believe he should be here shortly. As such, I suppose we ought to go back to making our rounds.
Now, it's not uncommon for a Dynasty Warriors game to have some goofy voice acting.
Feel the power of my magic!
But in this game particularly, the quality is substandard. Characters just don't have the energy or flair that previous entries had. And it doesn't sound like any of the actors are putting their heart into it, or at the very least they don't sound like they're having fun. I'm sure some of these actors are doing the best they can, but some of them literally sound like they're just reading off a script.
The beauty of my fighting style must not be soiled by defeat.
I shall return!
The beauty of my fighting style must not be soiled by defeat. I shall return.
And I don't know if anybody else noticed this, but a lot of these characters are a bit miscast. The biggest one that I've noticed is that both Zheng He and Zhou Yu's actors probably should have switched roles.
They are near the banks of the Shangjiang River. We are outnumbered. If they cross the Shangjiang, it will be difficult for us to outrun them. As such, we must do whatever we can to prevent them from crossing the river.
Same thing can be said for Ling Tong and Gong Ning.
That I understand. What I want to know is, why have you stuck me with this creep, Master Lu Meng?
Why don't you just shut your mouth already and get out there and fight?
How about we start again from scratch? New stakes. The loser buys the winner drinks for a year.
Huh. Sounds good to me.
But you know what? I can forgive a lot of these miscasts if the script itself wasn't so boring. Every single aspect about the scenario is just spoken out plainly in every single scene. I mean, previous games managed to condense all that information into short scenes, accompanied with optional dialogue with soldiers. But here it feels like they took all that optional dialogue and just crammed it into every important scene. So not only are these cutscenes boring, but they're long, ridiculously long. We get a cutscene for every time we complete something in these main missions. All of it is just people standing around and talking to each other. A lot of this could have just been easily conveyed through in-game dialogue. Why does it have to be a huge cutscene that goes on for 10 minutes? You know, a cutscene in previous games were kind of a special thing. They get you hyped up or rallied, gives you time to cool down after a mission. You know, they were used sparingly. But here, it's everywhere, and you can't escape it if you want to progress. I honestly have to try to keep myself occupied while these cutscenes are happening, because I fall asleep a lot while watching them. And if anything else, I'll just skip them because I couldn't be fucked to pay attention to any of that. They're conveying the story in the most uninteresting way possible, and I'm getting hyped down every time one happens. I'm not enthused to continue the story after seeing one. And changing the dialogue options to Chinese or Japanese can't help the script from being so dull. I don't know who this new localization team is, but they're not living up to the legacy as expected. And goddammit, I miss Michelle Speck.
Currently, we are bolstering our defenses at Luoyang and Pubanjin. I must apologize for failing to hold off Ma Chao.
This feeling almost akin to love. Ma Chao. How I have longed to see you.
So the open world's a mess, the combat's repetitive, and the dialogue is boring. There are other aspects about this game that make it terrible, but those are the main 3 points. And really, those are the only ones that matter. Because believe it or not, there are some redeeming aspects about this game, as far between as they are. The environmental design is actually pretty nice. With a lot more time, and I mean a lot more time and polish, it would have been a very beautiful looking game, because I'm seeing the foundation with the colors and lighting. It just doesn't go far enough to feel like a complete package. This world feels very nice to explore because there's a lot of diverse locations, especially with the weather system. And some of the cutscenes, about 10% of them, were actually pretty good to the point where I was genuinely affected by them. A special mention would be Han Don's death sequence, which even in a limited state actually feels like it has some genuine art to it. Everything slows down and we get an actual heartfelt moment between 2 characters. And I felt sincere emotions from that sequence. It's just a shame that prior to this, a whole bunch of other characters had to die in the most unintentionally hilarious way possible. There's also a lot of stuff in the game that I actually always wanted in a Dynasty Warriors game. Cross-factional storylines. Young Wei characters becoming senior Jin characters, bouncing back and forth between Wu and Shu campaigns during their alliance, and characters with a unique work history jumping back and forth between the factions. And every single character gets their own story and ending, which is nice, I guess. Although some of it is a bit copy-paste. And yes, I did call a whole bunch of these characters to be confirmed for the game. I just didn't expect the game they debuted in to be so terrible.
Why it gotta be like this?
In conclusion, I'm not mad, Koei. I'm just incredibly disappointed. You built up so much goodwill making all of these licensed games, branching out and finding new fandoms to bring into the Warriors fold. creating new and unique systems for each game. It was understandably believed that you were taking all these ideas that you were implementing in all these licensed games and fine-tuning it for when you make the next installment of Dynasty Warriors so that you hit us with something fresh and new. But instead, you decided to throw all that out the window and chase the open world trend, throwing everything that you learned out the window to jump on a bandwagon that you're super late to.
I was pretty dangerous in the past, but then I took an arrow in the knee.
You know what, I lied, I am mad.
I took an arrow in the knee.
The Fire Emblem, One Piece, and Zelda fandoms, they get all proper Dynasty Warriors games. But when it came to your core fan base, we get table scraps.
I took an arrow in the knee.
Those fandoms get top dollar production while we get cheap assets.
I took an arrow in the knee.
They get stellar and fun combat, we get button mashing.
I took an arrow in the knee.
They get all their iconic voices, we get
an arrow in the knee.
I'm not even mad that they tried something different. I'm mad because they didn't try at all while doing it. Because the game is busted. Dialogue sequences regularly crash, collision bugs are riddled everywhere, the AI are inept, the character scripting isn't polished, there's pop-in everywhere, and even in the most ideal circumstances, the game fails to load in environments. I lost the footage, but when I first got Cao Cao's ending, his house did not load, meaning he was sitting in a blurbish void. This game should have never been released in the state that it was, and I'm offended that they thought it was a good idea to do so, and put the Dynasty Warriors label on this. Even sadder is the fact that they had the attention of all these fandoms who were really impressed by their work, and when it came time to show off what a real Dynasty Warriors game is like, they blew it, and they're not getting a second chance at this. They aren't going to check out Warriors of Orochi or Samurai Warriors. This is what Koei Tecmo is known for, and it's definitely not the same style of game that was the base for Hyrule Warriors. If anything positive can be taken away from this analysis, it's that Koei Tecmo now knows the do's and don'ts of making an open world game. Or at least I hope that's what they took away. And who knows, maybe their next open world game will have more production behind it and be more appropriate, and not this mishmash of conflicting genres. They could have done so much with the work that they put into this game. They just didn't need to make it a Dynasty Warriors game. Because everybody who picked this game up expected a Dynasty Warriors experience, and this game is not that. In fact, in some aspects it's a regression, and nobody wants to play a terrible version of the thing that they love. Now there's just immense pressure on Warriors of Orochi 4 to blow us out of the park, because this entry made Koei Tecmo lose a little bit of my respect. Bit of a downer ending, but I just had to spit it real with you guys. Go away and leave me alone.